Hello, welcome to Thor Talk, the show all about Marvel's resident god of thunder. On this episode of Thor Talk, we look over Micheal Straczynski's Eisner-nominated run on Thor. We'll look at the story, what makes the run great, and why it was cut short on Thor Talk.
I am Thor the Thunderer, son of Odin, prince of Asgard, and this world is under my protection.
Straczynski's run on Thor is from Thor Volume 3 Number 1 to Giant Size Thor Finale Number 1. In 2004, Thor and all the gods of Asgard died in Ragnarok. Because of this, Thor had been absent from the Marvel Universe. But in 2007, Marvel finally decided that it was time for the God of Thunder to return. So Micheal Straczynski was tasked with bringing the Thunder God back into the Marvel Universe. Straczynski not only brought Thor back, but he modernized him a bit for modern audiences. He did this by toning down Thor's Shakespearean accent a bit, and he gave him a more modern costume. But Straczynski also managed to hold on to the classic Thor by doing things such as bringing back Donald Blake. Although admittedly, Blake wasn't used to his full potential before the series was abruptly ended. The story starts with Donald Blake brought back into existence, and he finds Thor in the void and tells him that the world needs him to come back or terrible destruction will be unleashed. After some convincing, Thor wills himself back to life and then goes on a mission to restore Asgard and its gods. One of the things that Straczynski requested early on was for Thor to be left out of big Marvel Universe events until he could get back on his feet. To help Straczynski accomplish this, he had Thor set up Asgard in small-town Broxton, Oklahoma. Straczynski also did this because he wanted Asgard and the gods to be akin to the Greek gods of old, who were all near mankind and often interacted with them. Straczynski manages in his run to keep Thor out of the conflicts of the Marvel Universe while still addressing Thor's thoughts on the conflicts. He makes it very clear that Thor would have sided with Captain America during Civil War, for example. The main story is broken up into 3 parts. Part 1 involves Thor establishing Asgard and its new status quo. Part 2 is the gods trying to adjust to the new status quo. And Part 3 is setting up a completely different status quo. Let's look at a few things that make it great. The run truly portrays Thor as a force of nature, a god among gods. Some standout moments include Thor number 2, in which Thor brings Asgard to Earth, and the police officers tell him that he can't build on this ground without proper ownership. I cannot build on this ground? Very well. So he casually turns around and uses lightning to permanently lift Asgard 10 feet in the air and turns around to the officers and says, "It is no longer on the ground," and then walks away as if the problem is solved. There's also Thor number 3, where Thor gives Iron Man the biggest beating in his life for imprisoning fellow heroes, starting the events that led to the death of Captain America, and cloning Thor and using that clone to kill Goliath. After beating him soundly, he then proceeds to threaten the United States government if they dare do anything that threatens the safety of Asgard. Not only does this run portray Thor as the ultimate god, but it portrays Loki as the ultimate villain. Loki manages to weave a plan so brilliant and convoluted that Thor never stood a chance. His plan involves little things like revealing to Balder that Balder is in fact Odin's son and that Thor knew and never told him. His plan also involves big convoluted things like going back in time, turning Odin's father into snow, and then going back throughout time to manipulate Odin into adopting Loki as a child, and then going back to the present, bringing Odin's father back to life, and forcing Thor to either kill his grandfather or die trying. Also, this run is where Lady Loki comes from, as when Loki is brought back to life, it is in the form of a woman. But it's later revealed that the only reason he came back as a woman is because he stole Lady Sif's body, and he did this basically just to mess with Thor. The series also gives a nice send-off to Odin, so that Odin willingly chooses to stay dead and Thor can remain ruler of Asgard. Now, the biggest weakness of Straczynski's run is just how short it is. It's only a mere 17 issues long. Jason Aaron's Thor God of Thunder series was 25 issues, and it was only the first phase of a run that's still going on today. The reason why it's so short is Straczynski's desire for a self-contained story. He didn't want his story to be brought down by a big event, but unfortunately Marvel wanted Siege to happen, in which Asgard would be destroyed. It would certainly be hard for Straczynski to avoid addressing that. Rather than risk his story in a big event, Straczynski quit, so his run probably didn't end the way he wanted. He had just set up Asgard moving to Doctor Doom's country of Latveria, but before this plot point was resolved, he left the book. Ultimately, Straczynski's run is a great start and middle that ended poorly because the ending wasn't supposed to be the ending. However, I still think his run is the best since Ragnarok. Well, that's all for this episode of Thor Talk. Firstly, I would like to give thanks to the Allfather C443. Thank you, Allfather. If you want to keep up with and support Thor Talk, simply subscribe. You can also support Thor Talk on Patreon at patreon.com/ThorTalk. Once again, I'd like to formally state that all art and video is owned by its respective companies, and I own none of it. With that said, see you next time on Thor Talk, where
you'll be holding